And now, to the Manager's Corner with Earl Weaver.
Hi, everybody. This is Earl Weaver with Manager's Corner.
The loss of Don Stanhouse.
Well, Don Stanhouse was an asshole. Like to ruin my health smoking cigarettes, and thank God we got Timmy Stoddard coming in out the bullpen right now, sticking a bat up their ass.
And when they see Stanley coming, they give him the road. He was my man, but he done me wrong.
Aloha, what's good? And howdy, party people. First, a word about the name of the show, which is Fantasy Baseball Manager's Corner. Welcome to it. This is inspired by one of my heroes, a baseball icon, favorite character actually from baseball for me, Earl Weaver, who was manager of the Baltimore Orioles in the 1970s. He's a notorious malcontent and charismatic as hell. He was famous for getting ejected by the umpires and fighting for his players. And he just generally was a iconoclast of the game and represents a lot of the unique qualities that I've always been attracted to, including the irreverence. So you can expect a bit of that. And Earl's pregame radio show is called Manager's Corner, and there's an infamous clip of him that I have a little bit of a clip of at the beginning of the show, going off on players on his team and teams or players that he had traded away from his team. And it is classic, to say the least. So if you haven't checked it out, and can tolerate some four-letter words, look it up, Earl Weaver's Manager's Corner. It's all over the internet, so back to it. But yeah, a little about who I am. Like, my baseball CV is fairly short, apart from playing a lot of fantasy baseball and actual baseball until I got into high school, and always having a deep, profound respect and passion for the sport. It goes way back in my family. My great-grandmother was actually the personal assistant or bookkeeper, however, I don't know what you'd call it in those days, to a pitching guru named Johnny Sain. So if you're not familiar with that name, Warren Spahn and he were teammates, and the Braves didn't have a whole lot else at the time, so the saying was Spahn and Sain and pray for rain. But Johnny Sain was an Arkansas native, as I'm sort of Georgia native, but by way of Arkansas. I had to spend the first 10 years of my life there. And that introduction to Mr. Sain and his influence on the game, I don't know if it was in my subconscious or what, but it's always been an obsession and a passion of mine. The sport and pitching in particular, and grips and shapes of pitches. And for those who don't know, Johnny Sain sort of was the pioneer of the modern day approach to, or at least the Greg Maddux approach, which still, is fundamental to pitching, which is painting both sides of the plate and expanding the zone so that you can get those calls from the umpire. And Maddux, of course, made a Hall of Fame amazing career out of being able to be a magician in that way. So anyhow, I started this season, this preseason, putting up content for Last Word on Sports, and you can follow what I do there via my Twitter, which is at CrashDavis108. And it's a new account, so I'm very grateful for any follows and retweets. So Crash Davis is, of course, a reference to the greatest sports movie, and definitely the baseball movie, Bull Durham, and Kevin Costner's name in that movie. So he was like kind of a childhood hero of mine, and what I hope to basically grow up to be. So that kind of says a lot about me, I guess. And what else? I'm also a filmmaker, a writer. I worked in Hollywood as a working screenwriter. I still do film stuff, but I live way far away from Hollywood now. I was in the sort of mid-teens of the 2000s, working with some managers and writing screenplays and treatments and doing that whole game. And actually, the thing that I sort of made as a calling card was about baseball. It was about a sports psychologist. And my managers loved the pilot. And they said, if you can make it about anything but baseball, we could probably sell this. So I didn't really want to. But these are also the same guys who, when I wrote a treatment in 2015 for a thriller about Russian mercenary terrorists or something, like infiltrating a presidential election, like no shit, they said Russia is a little too 1980s. So that pretty much sums up my experience. But yeah, enough about Hollyweird and all the bullshit they be tripping on. This is baseball season is starting, and it's opening day, and I am psyched, stoked, and ecstatic for the season to start. I don't know. I always get way overexcited at the beginning of the season and have to temper, roll it back by May in order to make it through the marathon. But yeah, so as far as my fantasy background goes, I'm probably dating myself, but the currently I've been in is like 10 years going, I think. And I won it outright 4 times. I think I've been in the money, some form of money, like 6 times. I've been pretty successful in that league. Probably my last year, because it's time to move on to. I'm basically hoping to do some competitive type leagues next season. So I got to research all that. I don't really know a whole lot about it, but NFBC is one of the things I hear a lot about. So if anybody has any recommendations, I'm kind of a noob, but thank you. Any advice I'm open to. Back when I lived in New York, I played that was the LA league I was in. But when I was in New York, I played in a 16-team league for a few years, and that was lit. I liked that format, is head-to-head. And I don't think that's very common. I know they do 15-team roto. One of the strategies that I think I've employed definitely in that 16-team to win the year I did, and pretty much kind of is a go-to of mine, is stashing injured players or drafting them at the beginning of the season. Basically touching guys that most people would be risk averse to. And in general, my strategy towards fantasy play and betting in general is the opposite of risk aversion. I'm not saying that I'm a daredevil. I like to take calculated risks. And this, my friends, is what the folks in the entertainment industry like to call a segue. The first guy I'm going to give you is in the 40% ownership range at this point. It's been dropping actually since 50%, I think, when I picked him up on right after my draft. And that is the Boston Red Sox middle infielder, Trevor Story. I'm going to give you 5 players to pick off of free agency if you, like me, get a little disgusted with yourself after the draft and have to shower a couple of those players off. The first tier will be, according to Yahoo, because that's what I play in, so just give me a kind of vague idea of ownership. 25 to 50% owned. I'm going to give you 2 from that, and then 2 from 10 to 25%, and then 1 from below 10. This is going to involve a little bit of imagination and speculation, which is definitely what you'll get from me. As I said, I'm a little into calculated risks, and I definitely can make moves that puzzle people, including myself sometimes. But there is definitely some degree of logic coupled with daring do in efforts to get a better advantage, because that's what we want to do. when we're dropping a player in order to pick up another one is we want to make a bold move in some way. A lateral move isn't worth making, especially if we have limited moves like we do in my league. And I may have not mentioned, but I play in a 12-team head-to-head league. That's my 10-year ongoing league. And I was startled by what a bag of dicks the middle infield has become. It really caught me off guard in the draft. So that's why Story was a pickup of mine right after the draft. And why I'm recommending him to be a pickup of yours, depending on how many injured list spots you have available. That's obviously dependent. Let's start with the facts of what he's gone through surgically. It's called an internal bracing procedure on his right throwing arm, ulnar collateral ligament. But what I'm curious about is why a player who is probably going to play this season is actually dropping in ownership when you can actually use the pickup of that player to pick up another player, because that's the whole point of using an injured list is to stash a really good player you hope is going to come back at some point so that you can pick up somebody that you really need at that time. So it's a 2-for-1. That's sort of the brilliance of using an injured list spot. Yeah, so I checked the ownership on Yahoo, and it's definitely on the 12-team paradigm. It's dropping down to 41% now. And so this is definitely not an urgent matter, but I thought it would be a good time to talk about something that's sort of a phenomenon in baseball when coaches and organizations speak or speculate about or when they prognosticate on a player who may be injured or may not be injured, or there's a lot of wordplay and kind of like neuro-linguistic programming, if you know what that is. It's done in order to lower expectations so that later on you can come back and subvert the expectations and you have a headline-worthy story that, oh, rope-a-dope, now this guy's actually going to come back sooner than we thought. And this is what we're seeing with Bryce Harper, which is why I'm way more optimistic on Trevor Story's timetable, because I started looking at like why would this guy be dropping in ownership. A lot of the headlines out there say that he's going to be out the whole season. So if people start reading that, they're like, oh, why didn't I draft this guy? Or maybe they're like he sucks, but like I think he doesn't suck, and that's sort of this great entree back into his Red Sox career. Is all the expectations have been lowered for the club in general, and he can come back and not have the weight of the world, like feeling like he has to play for this contract or whatever. And of course, Story's career has been kind of in decline, but this guy still has something in the tank at 30 years old. I would imagine that he can chip in a fair amount of steals, runs, RBIs, homers, especially if you take into account what I think, which is he'll be back maybe even before the All-Star break. So that's my hot take. And the reason why is Bryce Harper. He's another guy, and he actually had full-on Tommy John reconstruction in November. And Trevor Story had this bracing procedure in January. And this bracing procedure is far less intrusive, and the timetable for recovery is like 4 to 6 months, they say. And that's basically, in May, June for Story. So there'd be no reason why he'd be out the whole season. And then you look at a guy like Harper, who's probably going to be back maybe even before May. And the Phillies played this perfectly as well, because they waited until spring training to say, oh, you know what, we're actually not going to put him on the 60-day IL. We're keeping our options open. So with hitters and this UCL ligament, they won't be able to throw maybe as soon, but DH is certainly a possibility. It's going to be a definite for Harper, and Story can come back at his own pace. And again, I feel like his numbers last year in Boston may even have been somewhat because he was injured. Who knows? But it bears some calculated risk taking and having some IL spots. But I'm definitely way more optimistic than the news headlines are on Trevor Story. coming back way sooner than maybe even the All-Star break. So, or it would be at the earliest he could come back would be June. So let's say just before the All-Star break, if you can stomach an IL spot for that long, you'll know at some point if somebody else is worth picking up as well. So that's the beauty of this. The lower he drops, the more found money it is. Second guy I'm going to talk about in the 25 to 50% tier ownership is potential closer of the Chicago Cubs, Michael Fulmer. And the Cubs are like kind of a sneaky old school team, and the team that they've assembled this year is as old school as it gets, in my opinion. A lot of solid, as they say, professional hitters, and pitchers who are just going to keep you in ball games and not pile up the strikeouts, but get good defense like the Cubs have, and they'll keep you in ball games to win. So the Cubs will have some winning opportunities, and I think they prefer to have a set closer at the moment. They've been talking about it between Brad Boxberger and Michael Fulmer. This is definitely something where you do a little research, read between the lines, and you can see that the Cubs have set up Fulmer to kind of take this opportunity, which he has been vocal about, wanting to nail. The Cubs were reportedly one of the first teams to contact Fulmer and had like a whole diagnosis for his pitching repertoire and how to enhance it and bring the optimal life to his pitches. So one reads between the lines of their contracts as well. Fulmer has a little bit of top dog status here at $4 million versus Boxberger at 2.8. And another incentive the Cubs might have to anoint a closer who's set in stone and can pile up some saves before the All-Star break is if they fall out of contention, they can ship Fulmer off to a team who still values, when they're looking at trade candidates, guys who can close ball games. And arbitrators, when they're doing arbitration cases, value it too. So this is still very much something that is a measurable commodity in the industry. Now, as far as Fulmer's stuff goes, reportedly he has seen a little bit of some enhanced stuff from his sweeper. The Cubs have been, as a team in general, infected with the sweeper. And the last couple of seasons, since Fulmer went full-time relief, he had a little bit of uptick in velocity, and his swinging strike rate increased. So he's clearly flourishing and digging this new role, so there's no reason why the Cubs would want to harsh his mellow. So the next tier we're going to tackle is the 10 to 25% owned, and the first guy that I'm going to bring up is more because I can't really own him in my league because we count strikeouts. But if your league does not count strikeouts, no reason not to own Joey Gallo. He's just one of those guys that everybody hates and I love for whatever reason. And I feel like this may be Gallo's year to silence some of the catcalls and naysayers from his previous stints on the coasts. He's one of the prime candidates to benefit from the end to defensive shifts because not only is he one of the most shifted players in baseball with like the last few years 90-95% shifted on. So that's basically every time you get up to bat, you're looking at like 4 or 5 guys out in the outfield waiting for your line drive to get smoked right into their glove. It's like wiffle ball in Glassell Park. It gets into a player's head, and he's made comments about this, and there's been some clapback from fans saying, maybe you should just hit the ball, because his strikeout rate is astronomical, but this is what you come to expect in the game in general these days, and for a power hitter, it's par for the course. With Gallo, he can smoke 40 bombs easy rolling out of bed, given the right circumstances. And the right circumstances could be a 1-year deal that he's bet on himself in Minnesota to do the thing at 29 years old. This is not an old guy by any stretch of the imagination. And he is currently an outfielder in Yahoo, but I'm pretty sure he'll gain first base eligibility right away. He's going to fill in for an injured Alex Kirilloff. And now, this is, again, if you don't count strikeouts and you can tolerate the batting average, and especially if you can pick him up when he goes on a streak, here's what we're talking about. He's in the 98th percentile in barrels, max exit velocity in the 90s every season. I'd have chosen some other options for part-time players or players who are filling in for injured players, but I try to get with some full-time starters to open the season for these recommendations. So the next guy on the opposite end of the risk spectrum from Gallo is a very high floor, in my opinion, cat who blew the doors off in the World Baseball Classic. He's a fan favorite in San Diego where he plays, and he's going to bat in a stacked lineup. And this is Ha-Seong Kim of the San Diego Padres, playing second base, but in Yahoo, he is eligible at second, short, and third, so this will clear up any infield issues you might have. So if there's some scrub on your team, drop that scrub, hits you some Trevor Story on the IL, and then put Ha-Seong Kim in there to give you the floor you need, and maybe run away with 20 stolen bases. This season, stolen bases should increase pretty significantly. And he might even be able to tap into some more of that power he displayed when he was in Korea. I know the stadiums there probably play a little bit differently, but he's got a lot of momentum, came off an improved season last season, and doesn't have anybody looking over his shoulder right now. Now, the thing with Kim is he could steal 20-25 bases, like I said. But this is it, obviously would double his stolen base from last season. But you look at what he did, he only got caught 2 times. So this is sort of dependent on, there's a lot of guys who kind of are in that middle tier who stand to benefit from the new kind of stolen base enthusiasm running across the league, no pun intended. And Kim is definitely one of those guys who 15 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 25 might be on the, but it depends on how much the Padres want to run and propel that part of their game. Kim also might be a trade candidate at some point. Who knows? But the point is if the cat gets based on 600 plate appearances, full season's worth of playing time, he has a 55 run tool, so he's capable of definitely efficient stealing. So a team that's willing to let him steal, he could steal 20 bags easy. And as far as his max exit velocity goes in his debut season, he got up to 112. So he can crank it when he wants to. And that's why, especially getting more used to the league and more used to the ballparks, you can take more advantage when you're in those situations to pull one down the line and take that 11 home runs up to 17 or so. So that's definitely Kim's upside. He hit a lot of home runs in Korea, and so really at this point in his career, he's in his late 20s. There's no reason why he shouldn't have even more power upside going forward. So this player who is going to be my lower than 10% might not be there for very long between the time that I started researching for this drop and now his ownership has gone from 4% to 7% behind his 5th home run of spring training yesterday. Who I'm talking about is the second baseman of the Kansas City Royals, Michael Massey. Man, I wanted to say Nick Massey for some reason, but it's Michael Massey, and he's a ball player. Just looks like a ball player. Hits from the left side and a power speed threat. So this is definitely a guy to jump on with those ship sails. If he hasn't already become the fantasy industry darling, he's about to. And approximately 500 plate appearances spread out over the minor and major leagues last season. He hit 20 home runs and stole 19 bags. So anytime you can pick up a player with 20/20 potential, you just go ahead and do it, especially when middle infield is, like I said, the bag of dicks it is. He also, yeah, like I said, hit his 5th home run of spring training yesterday. So the ownership rate, jumped off of that. Had a couple of steals. And this is a very solid Kansas City team, more so than it has been in the past few years. You got superstar in the making, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, who's entertaining as hell and is a contact pro. And yeah, in general, this team is going to, put some runs on the board. And I'm not sure where Massey's going to hit in the order, but yeah, 15-15, why not? Absolutely, put it on the books. That's what I got for the pilot episode of Fantasy Baseball Manager's Corner. Like, share, subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at CrashDavis108 and track my writing at Last Word on Sports through that. I'll be back very soon with all types of content related to fantasy baseball. And if you guys have any, or girls have any recommendations or requests that content you want to see, whether it's types of advice or DFS, like head-to-head, roto, what's your preferences, kind of get the temperature of the room so that I can custom fit the content. And I appreciate all the likes and follows. So I'll see you guys soon. Happy opening day.